So you're welcome to Proud2bOps DOS Data and Information Series that is will be taking place in the next hour. So today is the first of 4 sessions, and the theme for today is data, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we are delighted to have Samantha Riley, who is the director of Making Data Count, and Karen Hayllar, senior manager of Making Data Count, both amazing data experts within NHSA. So they will be providing us with insights to help us foster transformational ideas and further improvements as operational managers and leaders in our various organizations. So if you don't mind, you can quickly introduce yourself in the chat box, tell us who you are, your position, and the trust that you represent today. Next slide, please. For those who might be meeting me for the first time today, my name is Esther Obasi, and I am the program manager with Proud2bOps, working quite closely with Emma Challenge Russell, who is the founder and chair of Proud2bOps. So if you have a social media presence, or you have social media platform that you engage with, we would like for you to engage with Proud2bOps on X and LinkedIn, and also visit our website where we upload materials and learners. For instance, today's learnings might be uploaded to the website, so we encourage you to use those. And if you're going to share the learnings and insight from today's session, please do remember to tag us. That would help to recognize and spread the fantastic work that we do as a network, as well as the work that we do across various health and care services. Next slide, please. Thank you, Karen. We always like to remind ourselves of our values and behaviors in the network, because these values and behaviors have over the years anchored the successes of Proud2bOps. So when we come together like this, we deem it safe to go over our values and behaviors again. So what we want to do here is to be open and honest and have a safe space where we can converse and where we can be inclusive and supportive, showing respect for each other's voices and opinions. We want to listen with an intent to be curious, to tickle our creative minds in order to develop transformational ideas that would improve patient care within our various organizations. We would also like to demonstrate positivity and passion. So in the next 45 to 55 minutes, I would encourage us to bear these values in mind. We believe that it is useful to shine the light on these values and behaviors at the beginning of all of Proud2bOps sessions. Next slide, please. Thank you, Karen. So Proud2bOps started in October of 2017 with 15 members clustered in one region. Now it has spread and scaled across all the regions. I would take pride in our over 1,500 members, with the 9th Proud2bOps launch happening today at Cardedale and Huddersfield. Thanks to our amazing partners who have continued to aid these milestones. And next slide, please. Okay, so this is just an highlight of what is coming up soon. Future sessions of this learning webinar series on Proud2bOps DOS Data and Information Series will take place on 15th May, 18th June, and 11th July, respectively, for sessions 2, 3, and 4. And then we have sharing elective stuff with our partner organization, Medinet, which will be taking place on the 22nd of April and 8th May, with a focus on accelerating elective recovery. And then on the 2nd of May, we would have Proud2bOps National In-Person event, which will focus mostly on developing operational managers. So the ticket for this actually sold out quicker than we expected. Right now we have a waiting list. So if you've got a ticket and you're not able to attend, please do let us know so that we can possibly reassign the ticket to someone else. And just to mention, in November, we'll be having our first Proud2bOps National Award ceremony. Thank you. Next slide, please. Yeah, so at this juncture, I would like to hand over to our amazing guests today, Samantha Riley and Karen Hayllar, who will now take us going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Esther. So lovely to see so many people. This is very exciting. So Karen, I'm going to see if I can move a slide. Let's see if it's working. But before I do that, can you give us a thumbs up if you've done any Making Data Count training so far? And maybe a surprised face if this is new to you. So it'd just be useful to get a little gauge. So look, we've got a mixture, Karen. That's what we thought we might have, didn't we?
Yep, quite a few surprised faces.
So we have done something a bit different for you today, but we're going to encourage participation. We're going to use the chat box. We're going to encourage emojis. We might even ask you some questions. So that's a little warning to start with. So module 1, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So hello from us. You've already seen our photos. Karen looks rather startled in the photo, doesn't she? So I head up the Making Data Count team, and Karen is my statistician. But we're gonna, for most of this session, actually become different characters. So you can judge us on how well our acting skills are going. So for this session, I'm actually Assistant Director of Ops for St Elsewhere NHS Trust. And Karen, when it comes up, have I got a little play here?
I can see it.
You can see it. So maybe you can see it before me. So Karen's the Head of Business Intelligence for the Trust. Now, Karen really helpfully, I've just started this new job. Karen emailed me and suggested meeting up, which I thought was really good to start with. Because over my career, I've been collecting different examples of analysis that I really, really like. They've been really helpful to me, and I really want Karen to be able to replicate them for me. So Karen, thanks for reaching out. Fantastic to meet you, very timely, because I've got all of these examples of fantastic analysis. I'd really like us to develop some consistent reporting for the trust. So I'm going to show you what I've got, and I'd like you to build everything into a dashboard, and I'd like that to be replicated for all of the divisions as a starting point. So are you happy if I just jump straight in?
Yeah, please jump straight in, Sam. I'd be delighted to see what you've got.
Okay, so as I said, I've been collecting these over the years. So this is a really, really helpful performance summary that I've used in a number of organisations. In fact, I've got heads of BI to replicate this in the various trusts that I've worked in. So it's particularly helpful. The arrows at the end, I think, are particularly helpful. The colour's really helpful to me. So this would be a definite graph that I want on the dashboard.
Okay, yes. Well, let's see what else you've got.
Okay, so the next thing I've got, you'll probably know already, Karen, it's really important to understand breach reasons if you're working in an acute trust. So this pie chart is particularly useful. It gives me that breakdown of the different reasons. So again, definitely a pie chart in the dashboard, please.
That's very interesting. We might need to talk about that just a little bit.
Okay, but I've got more for you. So this is really helpful. Diagnostic tests, very important area. So this provides me with a really good understanding of what's going on for December in this instance. So again, I'd like this breakdown, please, in the dashboard.
Okay. And what else have you got? Data over time.
Well, yes, so this obviously is going to supplement the previous example, because now I'm looking at data over time. So these charts are really helpful because I can see everything going on, and I can see what's going on over time. So this is, again, something that I definitely want on the dashboard, please.
Lovely. Oh, and that's very pretty.
Yes, and obviously long waiters, you're probably aware, Karen, that long waiters, it's quite a challenge at the moment. So here, look, I've got a really useful combination of looking at data over time, but also I've got a breakdown. So this is, again, something that I really want on the dashboard. I hope it's all going to fit on.
Wow.
These are all really critical visualizations. So,
yeah, so I mean, see you've pulled it all together.
I pulled it all together, so please go away and create this for me. And what do you reckon? A couple of weeks? Is that reasonable?
Well, Samantha, I think there's something we need to talk about first. I have some problems with some of these visualizations, so I might have some more helpful ways to look at data, although I would be fascinated to hear from those people with us today whether they see visualizations like that in their reporting sometimes. Again, we'd love some thumbs up or some smiley faces, or possibly some crying faces if you do. Yeah, so these are familiar ways of presenting data. Now, what's the problem with this? Well, Sam, I'm a statistician as well as the business intelligence lead, so I'd like to teach you something about data and why it matters that we represent our data properly. So the first thing we need to think about is variation. Now, you know that if you travel to work every day, your journey doesn't take exactly the same amount of time. It takes a slightly different amount of time. So if you go by tube or by car, you'll have a natural variation. We call that common cause variation, and that's the variation that's in all of our systems all of the time. Now, the NHS is exactly the same. We have normal everyday variation, so we have to be very careful about how we understand that. When we react to that normal everyday variation as if it were important, then we're going to do this. Now, have you ever heard of this word, Sam? Is this a new word for you?
It is. Is it something to do with potatoes, Karen?
No, yesterday someone suggested it was little potatoes, but no, actually the definition of spuddling, which is a real word, is to make a lot of fuss about trivial things as if they're important. Now, we do come across that, sadly, in the NHS sometimes. We come across people who react to that normal everyday variation as if it's important, and we need to learn not to do that. The reason we need not to spuddle is because when we spuddle, we tend to increase the variability of the services we're delivering. As on the whole, we're trying to make our services better, but also make them less variable, so patients receive a much more consistent service, and as managers we can manage a more consistent service. When we spuddle, when we react to that normal everyday variation as if it were important, then we tamper. When we tamper, we will almost always increase that variation. So we need to learn not to be spuddlers, and here's a lovely picture that someone drew for me which has said, don't make a big fuss and a drama about data which is changing. Make sure you know whether it's important change or not important change. And we do indeed, Sam, and you might find these helpful in your organisation, have some spuddling cards, which they don't say you are spuddling, that would be too accusatory. They say, are you spuddling? And so we do actually have colleagues who are using these cards when they see people reacting to that normal everyday variation in different ways. So if there's normal variation, are there other sorts of variation? Well, absolutely there are. There's unusual variation. We call that special cause variation. If on your journey to work you have a crash, that's unusual. Hopefully it's unusual, and it will make your journey time much, much longer. It's a sort of one-off unusualness. Where's my clicker gone? I want to get my next slide. Come on. No, can you click forward? Mine is frozen. Oh, there we go. So if we travel to work by car, we have a crash, then we are going to have a problem because our journey time is going to be much longer. That's a one-off event. It's what we call special cause variation, but we know what's going on. Perhaps in the NHS, what we're more interested in, I can't click, Sam. I don't know why not.
I'll do it.
Is that unusual variation, which is more sustained. So if we're travelling to work by car, for example, and they change the road layout, then what happens is our journey time changes, but it doesn't just change for that one occasion, it changes in a longer way over time. So that represents something in our services at our hospitals, which changes consistently, and what was unusual becomes the new normal. Now, if we're in the position where we have special cause variation, then we need to do something. We need to become detectives and investigate what's going on. And that will require you, Sam, as an operational manager, to talk to someone like me, who's a business intelligence manager, who will see those changes in the data. And we need to have a conversation about what's going on the ground, because actually, I don't know. I can show you a chart of changing data, but you're the one who knows what's going on. Now, we're using here a technique called statistical process control charts. So this is a statistical process control chart. It's specifically an X chart, but don't worry about that. There's a whole alphabety spaghetti out there of SPC charts. This is an X chart, and you can see the data's the line with the dots on through the middle. Then we've got the mean. The mean is just like you calculated at school, the average, really straightforward. And then above and below it, we've got those dotty lines. They represent the variability in this process. Now, they use something which measures the variation, and they are entirely dependent, absolutely dependent on the data itself. And there are 3 measures of variation above the line, 3 measures of variation below the mean, and we call that measure of variation sigma. It's like, but not the same as standard deviation. And if you're interested in that, we'll have that conversation another time. But there we are. So when we've got a system that's not changing unduly, then 99% of our data will fall between those process limits, and we need about 15 data points to make those process limits robust enough to detect that unusual variation. Now, we're human beings, so how are we going to know when the variation we're seeing in our data is unusual or special? Well, we have some rules, and these are the 4 rules I like to use in the NHS. Now, if you've done IHI training, you'll know there are more rules, but these are the 4 which we think are most relevant in most processes in most real-time hospitals on the ground. So the first one's a single point outside the limits. That's highly statistically significant. My favourite rule, and remember I am a statistician, so I'm allowed a favourite rule, is 2 out of 3 points close to the upper or lower process limit. That represents a begin of a change in our data that we might need to pay attention to. Probably more familiar rules is the shift of points above or below the mean and a run of ascending or descending points. All of these are highly statistically significant, and they help us understand when the changes we're seeing in our data are not just spuddly changes, normal changes that we get in ordinary variation, but unusual changes which we need to pay attention to. So we're going to have a little look, because SPC, these are statistical process control charts, as I said, does something even more clever. So it tells us when our data is changing, but it can also tell us whether our data is capable of hitting or missing a target. So next slide, please, Sam.
Well, Karen, can I just ask a question on this one?
Sorry, yes.
What do the colours mean?
Yes, we haven't got the cut. So in my world, Sam, in my making data count world, if I see orange dots or orange icons, that means concerning or deteriorating performance. If I see blue dots or blue icons, that represents good or improving performance. If you see grey dots, then they represent things which are not changing statistically significantly. Now, remember, I'm a statistician, so if I say significant, I mean statistically significant. So it's really helpful to know. Suddenly, our charts can make sense really quickly. So when you use a RAG table, we saw some RAG tables at the beginning, didn't we? Sam had a lovely RAG table there. What it's telling you is whether we hit or miss the target in any particular month. But statistical process control can do something much more clever. It can tell you whether your whole process is capable of hitting a target. Now, that's quite a useful thing to know. And if you look at 18-week performance, RTT 18-week performance, which is meant to be 92%, across the country, we're not hitting that target. So we could understand that. Now, Sam, here's an example for you. What do you think is going on here? Can this process, you can see there my data, you can see there's nothing changing statistically significantly. You can see my average and my process limits and that target. Can this process hit that target? What do you reckon?
No, it can't, only if we're going to have that rule that you talked about where the data pops outside the top. So what would we do here, Karen?
Well, if we needed to move this process to the position where it was hitting the target, we're going to have to put some improvement work. We're definitely going to have to intervene. We'd need to redesign the system. So as I've said, this is not RTT. If we're looking at 18-week RTT, looks like at most organisations at the moment, we can't hit the target. We know we need to do some redesign work. And we could use the model for improvement for that to help us move towards that target. Now, we've got an example here of some data which has been displayed on an SPC chart, and this is probably one of our favourite examples. So you can see here, we've got patients waiting for active recovery beds. And at the beginning there, they're waiting quite a long time, about 5.5 days. And you can see there's a variation around that. We can see the mean. We can see those quite wide process limits. So we know that patients will have a wait between 3 and 8 days. So that's quite a long time. Now, they did some improvement work at Sheffield here, and they improved not only the average, but the variability of the service. And you can see that on the graph. The mean moves down, the process limits are closer together, and they did some even more impressive improvement work. They expanded their unit, and now you can see that the mean is really low. So it's gone from an average of around 5.5 to an average of just over 1 days, and then we've got those very tight process limits. So patients are receiving a much more consistent service. This is a much easier service to manage because it's producing much faster turnover. So that's a lovely example of success, isn't it, Sam?
So their changes did work, didn't they, here?
Really good work, yeah. Now, I think the next example makes me a bit sad. So here we've got an SPC chart again, and we're looking at reducing the number of falls per 1,000 bed days in the trust. Now, in this example, you can see they work really hard. Look at all those initiatives they put in place, Sam. There are lots of things they've done. But can you see an improvement in that data? What's going on?
No, no improvement, sadly. So what kinds of things should they do now?
Well, I think if you need to reduce the number of falls, and of course we always want to reduce the number of falls, we need to ask some other questions. So we might ask, were the interventions correct? Did we do the right things? Did we do them properly? Did we engage staff properly? Did we do the right things, and did we actually do what we said we'd do? And finally, are there other factors which we should consider? Are there some offsetting factors we haven't considered? So there's a whole load of stuff around improvement work which we might need to consider. And I think we're going to come on to this more in one of our future steps, aren't we? So that's looking at data changing. Now, I've said you can use data for assurance. Not all of our metrics are failing. And here's an example where we can see we've got that data, we've got that dotted line, which tells us where our data is. We've got the process limits, which tell us what the range of variation is. So are we going to consistently hit this target? Absolutely we are. This is a capable system. And now Sam and I are particularly keen on this, really, aren't we, Sam? If we've got something that's going well, and I'm sure you do this with your teams all the time, you celebrate. If something's going well, if you're hitting that target, you need to celebrate. And so this would be an example where we're consistently hitting the target and we need to celebrate. Now, there are a few things we might want to say. Now, you're an operational manager. What would you say about this, Sam? Would you do that?
Well, I definitely celebrate, but I think we should think about changing the target, because I want us to be aspiring to be even better.
OK. And do you know what the finance director would say?
No.
No, the finance director might say, well, you're putting too much resource into this, so we're going to move some resource away. But my advice to you is, if you've ever got data that looks like this, celebrate before you change anything and make your life more difficult. So that's really helpful. OK. And this is the third example. Of course, there has to be a middle example. Now, if we saw this on a rag table, it would go green, red, red, green, red, red, green, red, 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 green, red, green, red, green. It would flip-flop between red and green. And if you ever see an icon, a rag table that's flipping between red and green, that's because the target line is lying between those process limits. The closer the target line lies to the mean, the more likely you are to do the flip-flop thing. So we won't reliably hit the target. If all you have to do is hit that target on average for the whole year, then maybe this is good enough, nearly good enough. But if you want to consistently achieve that target every month, then again, you need to improve your service so you move up. And it's like a 50-50 raffle. If your mean is very close to the target line, you'll get that flip-flop effect. Now, you'll be grateful to know, Sam, that I didn't make all of this up myself. I think you'd be a little bit unsure if I had. So there's lots of evidence around this. So SPC was developed almost 100 years ago next month in probably the manufacturing industry, but we've been using it in the NHS for ages to do really good work to understand performance. So there's a couple of papers here. Now, you'll all know, like we are all aware, that the CQC are very interested in this, and they're absolutely on board with this idea that we should look at time series analysis. Now, it says in this report the board should look at time series analysis, but actually we believe that it is much better if everybody throughout the organisation uses these techniques to understand where processes are improving, where they're deteriorating. Now, Sam, you'll be interesting to know that we want to use run charts or control charts, not bar charts, not pie charts, and not rag rating. So we better come back to that in a moment. Bill Kirkup wrote this report. It's specifically about maternity, but it's applicable across the NHS. Again, it says that we need to understand random variation and things which aren't random variation and use charts to look at that data. So really helpful there for Bill Kirkup as well. Now, I've talked about this a little bit, so we know that using statistical process control is helpful. we're looking at data over time, that's helpful. But how do we know what our charts will look like? Well, we use colours to highlight that special cause. We've already said if you see orange dots, that represents concerning performance or deteriorating performance. If you see blue dots, blue icons, that's improving performance. So that's really simple. So it means you can look at a chart and immediately know whether up is good or down is good, exactly what the chart's showing you. We were challenged when we started this work a few years ago that we needed to be able to summarise our data. So we came up with these icons. Now, we've already talked about variation, so we know when there's significant change in the data. So we have orange icons to represent increases and decreases. If that's in the wrong direction, the concerning direction. So orange H would be something that's getting worse and getting higher. And then we've got blue icons to represent improvement. And for example, if down was good, if you wanted to reduce that value and it was good and it was significant, you get a blue L. And then we've got those common cause variation icons, which is the grey icon, matches the grey dots. And then the assurance icons. Now, we've already talked about assurance. So if we're passing the target, we get a blue P. If we're failing the target, we get a orange F. And if we're in the position where with that hit and miss thing, where we're going to hit and miss the target every month, we get a grey question mark. Now, it's also really important that the narrative, the stuff we write about this, is supported by what the data says. You'll be amazed how often I read board reports where the narrative doesn't appear to have anything to do with the actual data. So we need to write narrative which supports the data and explains it further. So let's go back to your dashboard. What do you think we could do as an alternative? Well, I've got a few ideas for you, Samantha. The first one we're going to look at is that RAG table. Now, I have a real problem with RAG tables. My problems are these. I can't tell if anything's changing significantly. I can't tell if where I should focus. I just don't know. And particularly this one, it's all a bit red, isn't it? A bit depressing. I don't have any assurance about any of those processes. The green arrows don't tell me anything very helpful. I personally think if you've got a summary page, it should leap out and tell you exactly where to look. So how can we help with this? Well, let's have a little look just at the cancer services. So here's cancer, and you can see it's red across the board. We've got one service apparently improving. That's the 28-day FTS. The 31-day is also going up, and the 62-day standards going down. So is that what I think the data's really telling me? Well, let's have a look. So here we are. Here are the charts of the data over time. Now, remembering blue dots for improvement, blue icons for improvement, orange dots for deterioration, orange icons for deterioration. What we can see immediately is that none of them are actually hitting the target yet. We're failing all three targets. So that's a bit sad, but there is some really good news. If we look at 28 FDS, you can see that there's real improvement. We've got quite a long period where the blue dots have been above that mean line, which means we've got statistically significant improvement. So we're definitely moving in the right direction. That's really good news. Now, and the same for 62-day, although I have to say, we've got that red arrow in the table above because this month is worse than last month, but we are actually in a period of improvement. If you look, you can see those orange dots further back were around 30 and 40%, and now we're producing performance which is above 50%. So some real improvement there, even though this month was worse than last month. So we have to be very careful. I don't think I believe in your red down arrow there, Sam. In the middle there, of course, we've got the one that's not changing. So although 83% is indeed more than 82%, actually what we're seeing is is no change at all. So slightly different story. So I would replace those arrows with these icons, and you can see that 2 of my services are improving statistically significantly and 1 is staying the same, but they are all still failing the target. So we always need to remember that. And we can put that into a summary table like this. So you can see here all of that data. You can see the latest value, the target, whether we're improving or deteriorating, whether we're failing or passing the target, and some other summary data. So I don't know, Sam, what do you think? Is that going to help you understand what's really going on?
Yeah, I actually think you might be changing my mind, Karen. I can't believe I'm saying that, but I think these views provide me with much more information, and actually they don't take up more space because that's obviously always a concern.
Yeah, So maybe you're convinced on that one. Okay, let's have a look at your pie chart. Now, I have to admit, Samantha, that I hate pie charts. There is no two ways about it. I think I could tell you from looking at this pie chart what the two biggest sections were. So I can see that patients waiting for a bed is the biggest cause for delay in ED, and possibly the next one, which is green, but which green, hard to say, might be specialty referral. Not sure though, quite hard to read this, isn't it, and get a lot of data out of it. I think there's a better way we could display this, and that's called a Pareto chart. A Pareto chart is just a stacked bar chart. So Excel does your pie chart, but it will also do your Pareto chart. It's really, really simple. So all we do here is put the reasons in columns of the most frequent to the least frequent. So if we do this, you can absolutely see that the most important reason was patients waiting for a bed. We can see that the second most important reason was a specialty referral. So that's my two ones. And those two together are worth 52% of the delays in ED. So that's really important. If I'm going to work hard at improving something, that's where I'm going to look. Now, quite often people say to me, oh, it's the portering service, that's the problem. But when you do this sort of analysis, you can immediately see that the portering service is not responsible for very much of our delay at all, is it? It's just a tiny bit. So again, I find this easier to read, quicker to interpret. What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, I think particularly when we get to those bars in the middle, where it's really difficult on the pie chart, isn't it, to see which one's bigger or smaller. I find this visually more useful as well. So you're doing quite well at changing my mind, Karen. What's next?
Okay, well, let's see how we go on the spaghettigram. Now, really, I'm just going to step out for a moment here and ask anyone, can you tell what's improving and what's deteriorating in this? Please type in the chat or tell me what you think. Is anything improving? Can you tell? No. Lena says no.
Do people see these? Might be another useful question to ask people. You can type in the chat. So they can't see the difference, Karen.
No, I think that's fair enough. It's really hard to do, isn't it? So I don't like spaghetti. We always say in our team, spaghetti's nice for tea. Now, I'm going to show you a lot of charts now. So I know there's a lot of charts here. But because of the colour convention we've explained, you can see the icons, which are blue and orange. You can see the dots, which are blue and orange. So even though there's lots and lots and lots of charts and it's a little bit hard to see what's going on, because of that, we've got all our diagnostic tests here and we can highlight on them what's getting better and what's getting worse. So the first two I'd like to highlight are these. So this is real data from a trust I worked with recently. So they're doing very well on their CT scans. Look, they're nearly up to the target. They're doing pretty well. It's quite good performance. It's quite high. It's not improving at the moment, but we're in the position where we're flip-flopping. DEXA scans, very small service, but again, real improvement. Then we've got another one that's actually improving. Our MRI performance is going up, and that's quite good because that's another big service. So you can see month on month of real improvement for patients waiting more than 6 weeks for their MRI scans. And then we've got the slightly less exciting stuff where nothing's changing. Now, all of these 4 ones with the grey boxes around them are failing to meet the target and they're not changing. Now, if you're not meeting the target and you're not changing, you're not in a great position, are you? So we probably need to think about doing some work with ultrasound, gastroscopy, cystoscopy and audiology. Now, the other 4, the 3 over there, we've got a problem. So 2 of those are failing the target and deteriorating, and one of them is flip-flopping on the target, it's just in the position, so we can see that colonoscopy just somewhere near the target, but actually real ongoing statistically significant deterioration. So those are probably the ones I'm going to focus on, because we need to know we can't treat all the services the same. They're not all performing the same, and we might need to support the ones which are doing worse and failing and getting worse more than the others. What do you reckon, Sam? Does that help you see where you might need to focus your work as an ops manager?
Yeah, I have to be honest, Karen. I've seen lots of those spaghetti charts. I've never really understood them or found them useful. I think a few people have put that in the chat, but I didn't know what to do as an alternative. So this does appear to be a great alternative, but there are lots of charts. So could we do anything about that?
Yeah, Well, we could. I'm just going to answer a question. So the lines are not 3 standard deviation. It's not standard deviation, just so you know. It's a different variety of measure of variation, which takes into account the fact this is a time series. If you want to know more information, do just contact us and I'll explain more. Okay, so that's your point. So now we're looking at more diagnostic tests, and that's your table. So how could we summarize it? Well, this is reasonably helpful in one way because you can see the latest month's performance. But again, I think I'd like to use an icon summary table to give you more information, not much more space, of course, a little bit more space. But now we can see for every diagnostic test how we're performing. We can see where we're improving. We can see the latest value, thank you. We can see what the target is, always important. We can see whether we're varying. Are we getting better? Are we getting worse? Are we staying the same? You can see that assurance icon. You can see the average performance. And of course, the average performance is the most likely indicator of what will happen next if your system's not changed, and the range you can expect. So again, a lot more information on that table. Now, you might not want to put the last 3 columns in. You might just want to go with, if you're short for space, you could do the first 4 columns. But what do you reckon, Sam? Does that help?
It does, and actually I think that the understanding the expected range is probably quite helpful. So I think I might want to keep that in actually, Karen.
Okay, well, that's useful. Now possibly the next one, Samantha, your stack bar is my favourite. I don't know what these for. If you wanted to say something about the total number of 52-week waiters, I guess you could look at the top line, but that's about all it does for me. Again, some of these services are actually improving because I looked at your data, and some are deteriorating. Can you tell which is which?
Well, I could hazard a guess. I wonder if anybody's better at reading these graphs in this session. So does anybody want to type in the chat? What are you interested in? Just which ones are changing? Is there improvement? Is there deterioration? What do you reckon? Also, same question again. Does anybody see charts like this very commonly? Or maybe you don't. Maybe it's just me collecting my examples over the years.
I hope they don't, Sam, because I don't think these are very helpful charts. So let's have a look at 2 specialties. So we picked out 2 of the biggies, TNO and ENT. And they look a bit similar, don't they? They're sort of in the middle there. So I pulled the data for those 2 charts. Now, I have got a slightly longer time series, so it is just marginally cheaty, but there you go. If we look at TNO, actually what we've got is a real deterioration. So we're looking at patients waiting more than 52 weeks, and rather than seeing the reduction we're all working towards, what's actually going on here, and remember this is real data from a trust I worked with, is we've got more and more people waiting 52 weeks for our TNO service. So that is a problem. It is failing and it's getting worse. If we look at ENT, we get a slightly different picture. Again, a really large service dealing with thousands of people. But here, I know that they started an initiative to try and improve their work. And you can see, although they are still failing, and there is no question that they've still got too many patients waiting 52 weeks, what we've got is real improvement. So very different stories. And I don't think, unless you're a super amazing person at reading charts, you're going to pick that out from your stack bar.
No, I think that's fair. And again, much more useful, Karen. I'm liking you as a head of BI. I'm glad that you contacted me.
So again, we can use that icon summary table to summarize that, and then we can see that sadly, although, well, with a target of 0, how are we going to succeed? Not yet. I think we've got a time to go, but you can see that none of them are hitting the target. You can see what's improving, and you can see the services you'd want to be congratulating. So dermatology doing really well, ENT doing great, gastroenterology and gynecology all doing well. Other services where we need to take some action. Now, I particularly feel that it is vastly important to congratulate those who are doing a great job and encourage them to carry on doing a great job and keep improving.
I would agree with you, Karen, absolutely. So that's been super helpful, Karen. So I think what you've persuaded me of is that there are some better options for some of the examples, well, actually all of the examples that you showed me. So am I right? You can just confirm that I'm right, that I could replace the pie charts with Pareto charts?
Yep.
And then I think what you're saying is for all of those other visualizations that I had in my desirable dashboard, we could use SPC charts and we could use the icon tables. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. Now, if you're only summarising, you probably want to use the icon summary tables. But for you as a manager on the ground in real time, you probably need to look at those charts to see the detail of what's really going on.
Okay. So I'm going to come out of character now. So I'm now no longer the Deputy Director of Ops. I'm back being Sam. And Karen's back being Karen, but you didn't really change being Karen, did you?
No, I'm pretty bossy all the time.
So let's have a little look then at what good looks like, because we've trained thousands and thousands of people in this now. Karen's done huge amounts of work with boards. I think we're up to, is it 219 board sessions have been delivered. We've trained about 33,000 people, but we'll have trained about 700 this week, I think. So we've now got great examples of what good reporting looks like. So what I'm going to show you is not a full report. These are some excerpts from integrated performance reports that go to boards, in trusts and other organisations, but I'm just going to show you the different visualisations. And many of our organisations have now applied this approach down to divisional level and also specialty level. So let's just have a look at the component parts that are going to be useful. So Karen, I think the matrix is the most useful view. So here we're looking at what's happening in terms of assurance compared to what's happening with variation. This is from a mental health trust. So if we've got indicators in this column, they're failing the targets. So we'd obviously want to focus on those. Then we can see that some of those are worsening. So again, this is where we need to take action. We've got quite a number there that aren't changing. So we do want to make a decision about, are we content with that, or do we need to do some improvement work there? Of course, we want to be in a position where we are consistently passing the target and we either have got stable performance or we're getting even better. But of course, we'd be happy, wouldn't we, if we saw improvement in our data, regardless of whether we're consistently passing the target at the moment. So this is a great visualization to make sure that you focus on the right things. Now, icon summaries, Karen's shown us lots of those. So here's another example from Norfolk and Suffolk, where they've got icon summary tables. And then at the start of each section of their report, they've got some nice summarized narrative. Now, in the next session, we might talk about narrative, mightn't we, Karen?
I think we might, yeah.
I think we might, because that's really important to get right. And here we can see not all of the graphs within the icon summary being put into the main report, but then being put in where they are interrelated or make sense to look at together. And again, we've got some nicely structured narrative underneath. So I put the link there to the board paper if you want to go and have a look. It is, of course, also useful to consider a benchmarking position. So we've got the model hospital, loads of data in there. We don't need all of the charts. We could just reference what position we're in, maybe top quartile in our narrative. And Karen, this is from East of England Ambulance. Look, they've got a Pareto chart.
Very nice.
So we're not dictating to you precisely what a report looks like, but we wanted to show you the component parts, and you can think about what have you got at the moment, and actually what could you replace some more helpful visualizations with. Now, does this make any difference, you might ask? And the answer is absolutely yes. So we've got lots of evidence that says that by changing how data is visualized, it is changing conversations. And I think we're starting to get evidence of those changed conversations and those changed actions are actually resulting in some better outcomes for patients, some improvement in the data. So it really is making a difference. So if we adopt this consistently, and some of you might be using some of this already, it's not enough to just throw in a couple of SPC charts. What we're talking about here is a fundamental change in how you use your data. And I think where I've seen this most effectively employed is where a trust has agreed that they're going to adopt making data count as their core style of approach. And we've got consistency of how the data looks from board level down to divisional level and even down to ward level in some instances. Now, if we do that, we're going to be much less headless chicken. Look, they've got the heads on, but that's probably good, isn't it? And we're going to be doing a lot less spuddling. people are telling us they're doing far less spuddling. If your board is doing less spuddling, that's going to be good for you, because you won't be sent off to go and do things which are not going to be very helpful. And of course, if we're not wasting time doing all of that, then we can focus on the things that are going to be benefiting our patients. So that was a whistle-stop tour. It was a little bit different to what we normally teach. We like to leave you with some things to do, I think, in these sessions. So we had a bit of a think, Karen, didn't we, about what might be things that you might want to do now. So these are obviously just suggestions. It might be an idea maybe to go and review what charts you're most commonly seeing in your reports, because I think we saw in the chat that some of you are seeing some quite unpleasant things, aren't you? The good, the bad, the ugly was what this session was called. If you're not already best friends with your BI team, I think that would be a really good thing to do. And throughout all of our training, we really encourage closer working with analysts. And that's really beneficial, both from the point of view of people working in operations and having clinical roles. But Karen, as an analyst, that makes a difference to you, doesn't it?
Yeah, you feel like you're really part of the whole organisation and what's going on. It's definitely engaging. When I was an analyst in trust, it was great when the operational team engaged with me.
And I think what we've seen, we work with the most challenged organisations in England. What I've often come across is BI teams that are really brilliant and they know the right thing to do, but they're not as confident as Karen in providing some challenge. So I would encourage you to reach out to the BI team and have a dialogue with them, rather than doing what I did and asking Karen to create something that actually wasn't very useful at all. We say the same to analysts, by the way. We ask analysts to reach out to you. Now, if you did want to create any of your own charts, Karen's very good at writing little tools. So we've got a range of SPC tools. You might want to download one. I mean, you don't want to do this at scale probably, but you might want to have a little play. And then, well, the last thing, we're hoping that you might sign up for the next session. We're going to give you a little taste of what we're going to cover. But I pulled together this checklist that I thought might be useful for you in terms of reviewing your reports. You could go through, couldn't you, one of your commonly viewed reports, and you could add up the number of tables of numbers, RAG, visualisations, pie charts, spaghetti charts, etc. Other monstrosities, because, you know, we haven't shown you everything that's awful.
No.
And you could add that up, couldn't you? And then you could add up the stuff on the other side. And if you're on this side, you've got more numbers here, you're probably going to be in a bit of a sad position. You might want to ask for some help. If you're over this side, you're going to get some stars, and we'd love to hear from you actually to find out what you're doing in your trust. And then you might be somewhere in between. So a little checklist. Look, you could even print that out. We like to be practical. Go make friends with the BI team. Now, you might find them in quite dim and distant places in your organisation. Porter cabins sometimes, Karen, I think.
Towers, yeah.
Yeah, basement maybe, but they are there somewhere. You might just have to work hard to find them. So here we've got Abigail. We've got a clinical team going to speak to Abigail. Look, she looks really happy, Karen, because she's been contacted by real people and it's not an email. So she's really happy to help. She's going to go along to the meetings, provide analysis. They're really grateful for the help. So top tip here, make friends with your analysts. Analysts love cake, is my experience over the year. Karen, would you like a bit of cake?
I would, but I'm on a diet at the moment, so please don't give me cake.
Cake, biscuit, it's just that acknowledgement, isn't it, to say well done. And look, she's chuffed with the cake. That's really made a difference to Abigail's day. So this really is a match made in heaven if we can strengthen the links between BI teams and people like yourselves. So if you're analysts, just to say, we haven't got time now to talk about all of the offerings for analysts, but there are a lot. So if your analysts don't know about making data count, then here's our team email address. Get them to email us. We had an analyst meeting earlier today with 420 people. So that was sharing a really important package that's been developed in Australia that they can use for free. Now here's Karen's tool. So this is something you might want to have a little play with. We might think about doing a little demo next time, but it's very easy to use. I've put the link here to the tool, which is on our future site. If you're not a member of the site, you might want to join. So this is the future site. Our numbers have grown very significantly over recent months. We've got about 11,500 members now on our future site. So there's the link there. And we do also have some little hard copy mini guides. In fact, I have, well, until about half an hour ago, I had 40 boxes of these sitting in my hall. So we're going to put a link in this chat. If you want to order hard copy guides, then we can send you some, and we can also send you spuddling cards. Look, bears love making data count. It's not just the NHS, it's gone big in the bear community. They absolutely love it. This is Clive and Barney, by the way. So next time, so we're hoping that you might have learned something, and we might have made you smile a couple of times. I think we might have done. So what are we going to cover next time? Well, Karen, I'll have gone away and I'll have created some charts that I'd like to show you, and you're going to be really impressed.